attitude when you doing your last video, like, nigga, when you gonna take me out to eat?
Yeah.
When you gonna take me to the movies? When we gonna go on a date? And then it causes relationship problems in your real life that can affect your content. You might get mad in an argument. You might not want to film the next day. You might not want to stream the next day. You might not want to go to the studio the next day.
Hey guys, and welcome to Little Black Book 91. Listen, we're doing a deep dive between DDG and Halle Bailey. I always pronounce it wrong, you know me and names. And I really do believe we have an attachment style issue here between Halle and obviously, or Halle, sorry I should say, and DDG. And I think what we're seeing is a dismissive versus fearful avoidant once more again. You know, that's one of my favorite breakdowns, but I think we're seeing that here. And the reason why I'm saying that is because what we see from DDG, and especially when they break up, is that we hear him spouting off, but we actually also hear him, we saw in the previous season when they kind of had problems, how he reverted back to the ex Ruby Rose at the time. We see how when we ask him about how he feels, he says, I don't give a heck, I've moved on. He hasn't processed any of his feelings. And that is a typical avoidant response when you have a thing like a very emotional situation where you break up with somebody. And so the lack of kind of processing and giving itself time to be able to feel what you feel is probably a sign that he might be an avoidant. Not only that, in his lyrics, one of his songs, he actually said, listen, you know, about how relationships can end up being distractions in a sense, basically saying F relationships. And that is such an avoidant response, right? The inability to balance emotions whilst trying to chase, quote unquote, the bag, because you're trying to find your meaning and in life and be seen and play your role. I think also on the other side, we got the other avoidant, which is fearful avoidant with Halle as well, because she grew up in a particular household. In fact, I went to do some research and I realized that in her background, her dad, Doug, was accused of 2 counts of family violence battery. Yep, 1 offense of simple battery and 1 allegation of 3rd degree cruelty to minors, according to Radar Online anyway. He was also charged with assaulting Halle and Chloe's mother and was sentenced to 9-month domestic violence program. Now, if you know anything about DB, you should know that it's not a once-off situation. You don't just become a DB person, right? Now, of course, there can be those moments where you had a moment and then etc. But the fact that he got put into a violence program tells me this is probably some behavior that involves anger spurts, probably some, you know, outbursts. You know, there's probably tension in that household. And I know that the way that I've heard Halle and Chloe kind of, you know, big up their mum and their dad, but we often know that people who are especially avoidants don't always tell the fullness of a truth of the relationship they have in a household. In fact, they're known to push down and suppress what they actually experienced in a household because it was part of their survival technique. Now, from what I see with Halle as well, I thought she might be an anxious person, and potentially she could be. But just the way that she's also responded with the almost ride or die behavior. You notice how she, when he went and did the Ruby Rose situation, she suddenly developed the devil is working against her. Like the obvious missing of the individual person's flaws and bypassing it so that you don't become alone and be abandoned in that situation. The fear of being abandoned can make somebody actually now put themselves in a position to actually make up some fantastical story about the devil trying to break us up with Ruby Rose when your man is actually the one that texted Ruby Rose. Okay, so I'm seeing 2 people here that potentially may have these avoidant backgrounds interacting with one another. I'm going to break it down a bit more for you guys as well to give you a bit more understanding as to why these 2 actually chose each other. Because oftentimes we look at relationships and we look at it from a perspective of, well, Halle is better than DD, she deserves better. And I keep telling you guys, listen, if your mind does not have faith for what you're actually doing, you will see the behavior, you will see the action. It won't match what you say you believe. So you got to transfer from belief to faith. And the same with DDG. He may love Halle. He may have cared for her. He may have, we saw him buying presents for her, like taking care of her. Look how he loves his son. I see that as well. And there's some videos of him like with his son, and I love that, right? But the inability to be able to balance accordingly your emotional state, not even time, your emotional state, with also being able to go out and chase the bag can be very difficult for dismissive avoidance because they're so used to dismissing how they actually feel and letting their wants and their needs begin to build up. So long as I'm getting the bag, I'm a man. And that's where a lot of us men can end up being. So we're going to break it all the way down for you guys. Make sure you stick with us. I'm turning up the heat on this channel, so don't turn over. Like it, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notification of uploads. I will explain more about attachment styles for you in a second or 2. Make sure you guys like it, you share, and you subscribe, okay? Because we got to go a little bit deeper with this situation. You know what I'm saying to you, yeah?
Deeper.
All right, cool. So, for those of you who are new to this, we're talking about attachment styles. Attachment styles is simply, it was an experiment done by John Bowlby, which was expounded upon by Mary Ainsworth. And John Bowlby, what he said was, he observed children with the caregiver. So that child, the way they would interact with the primary caregiver, or sorry, the one that would, the caregiver that would interact with the child, he would see how the child would react to the caregiver when the caregiver left the room and came back in. And then he developed what we call these 3 attachment styles, which was secure, which everybody's trying to be, where if you're secure, you're able to put out boundaries, you're able to say what your wants and needs are, you're able to love and accept love easily, you can accept help, you can ask for help, you have a really good balance, right? And then there was obviously the 3 insecure attachments, dismissive avoidance, which I think DDG is, which is an inability to really be able to want to do intimate relationships with people. You struggle with the emotional aspect or the emotional intimacy that you have with people. When people get too close, you want to kind of push them away a little bit, right? Because they're getting too close, they're getting too needy, they're getting on your neck. They're not, and basically your great fear is either being rejected or losing your autonomy. Then we have fearful avoidance, which is like almost the opposite of DEA, right? Almost. And the FA basically is, I call it that they are both anxious and avoidant. The fearful avoidant tends to want to oscillate between the two. So if you are somebody who is more avoidant, the fearful avoidant will tend to kind of want to pull closer to you. They'll draw closer to you, right? Which is what I think happened with Halle in this situation, right? And then the other side is that they become very anxious. They become very avoidant if they meet somebody very anxious. And so what you'll find is that they struggle between the two, and they always have one foot out because they're ready to run again because they grew up in chaos. And that's going to explain a little bit why I said about, I think Halle may have the fearful avoidant traits. And then we have the anxious attachment, which is more AP or anxious preoccupied, meaning people who try to earn love, they get their validation from outside of themselves. They have a higher esteem of others than themselves. So they're always in a place of servitude. They're always in a place of chasing, right? They're always in the one who's trying to mend the relationship, always the person to say sorry. We'll go deep into that another time. So we're going to focus on dismissive avoidant versus fearful avoidant. Yes, dismissive avoidant versus fearful avoidant. And I'm going to give you some reasons why I believe that, okay? All right, cool. So as I said, the fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidance are attachment styles. And when I look back a couple of back over their relationship, we remember that obviously DDG had a situation with Ruby Rose, his ex-girlfriend. Him and Halle at the time were having some big problems, and the first thing he did after that little problem they had was to run back to an ex. Why? Because he needed the company and the safety, and he needed the stroking of, not quite, I want to say ego, but he needed the safety of someone not dismissing him and rejecting him. One of the hardest things for many dismissives is feeling rejection. And they can feel rejection from criticism, they can feel it from you pulling away, they can feel it from you being rude, they can feel it from you changing your behavior if you're being inconsistent. They can immediately feel it and become personalize your behavior as something to do with them as wrong. And the reason why is because as children, a dismissive avoidant tended to have been in a situation where the parent would neglect them. And so the child has to take on a persona that goes, it must be my fault that the parents do what they're doing because I can't afford for the parent to be bad because then I can't get my needs met. Okay? Now, dismissive avoidant. I'm going to focus on DDG a little bit so you can understand why I'm saying this, right? So the Ruby Rose situation happened, and that was one of the things. He ran straight to Ruby Rose, an ex, and got, he picked himself up in that respect, right? But the other aspect is this, that the relationship didn't fully end before he wanted to run to something else. He didn't give himself time to process, which is typical of dismissive avoidance, right? Because then what actually happens is it's painful to process the emotions that you're feeling. And so dismissive avoidants tend to do one or two things: completely go into isolation, or they pick up somebody else. They don't need to necessarily monkey branch, which is what FAs do, fearful avoidance. Fearful avoidance might monkey branch, but with dismissive avoidance, they tend to do one or two things. Either they are isolating themselves and, I'm going to go on my grind. I don't want to hear nothing from nobody. F these women, excuse my language, I'm on me. And actually you hear DDG saying that. In a lot of videos, you will hear DDG telling you, focus on your grind, which is why I play this video.
Whatever, yeah. So I would tell myself, if I was 22, I would say, bro, just grind it out. Let a relationship happen. Yeah. But only happen when you feel comfortable in yourself as a man. I feel like you should.
So his advice, and actually he gives his advice on several occasions that a man should focus on himself, which is actually really good advice, by the way. I'm not going to say it's bad. Again, it's really good advice. And the reason, again, going back to, like I said, it's very good advice because as a man, you should have your purpose and your lane that you're going down, and a woman be added to that, so you don't get easily derailed and pedestalize a woman, right? But a part of that also is the dismissives also struggle in the area of balancing their emotions or emotional state in a relationship when you're asking for too much. What will trigger a dismissive is emotional volatility or too much emotional intimacy over being overly vulnerable. And so what can end up happening is that in that relationship between himself and Halle, if she is more emotionally volatile, and I know we've called her the Disney princess, and we look at her like she's perfect. She's not. She's a human being. She do's like everybody else. Okay, and so being that I believe that she might be a fearful avoidance emotional states can be, you know what I'm saying to you, and they can be very high functioning. Excuse my English, but Dr. Brown would say they can be very high functioning in a way of, what I mean by that is they can be very career minded, they can be very focused on self development, they can be very in the public eye or even on the surface of it, they look well put together. But when you really get to know them and you give them intimacy, spend time with them, you'll realize that a lot of times there's a lot of struggles that FAs are going through. A lot. Okay? And so with that, you'll realize that with that situation, that she may have those issues and struggles in the relationship. I want to see if I can even get this play this a little bit more. I want to be able to play this a bit more for you guys as well. Or let me do this. Obviously, as well, with dismissive avoidance, because they struggle to process a lot of their emotions, right? What you might find with dismissive avoidance is that they tend to have what I call, just like fearful avoidance, they tend to explode. But the explosion might not necessarily be outwardly, it might be inwardly. And so when they get angry, when they get anger from the hurt or disappointment that somebody elicits in behavior, they tend to do an avoidant technique. So when they get angry or hurt, rather than actually being in a good space and emotionally safe to express how they feel angrily, they lean away. Now, this is going to cause issues in any relationship because what the DA will do, them moving away will trigger the FA, the fearful avoidance. If DDG starts going, I'm going to focus on my work, I'm going to put all my energy into my work, and I'm going to kind of ignore you a little bit, right? Because I need to do my work. That can cause an insecurity in the fearful avoidant, and then they start feeling like they're being neglected, but they also feel like, right, that they're not emotionally safe. Guess what the fearful avoidant is going to do? Either become more anxious or they're going to mirror you. And then they're going to go pulling away. But then when you pull away, the dismissive avoidant goes, why is she pulling away? And then ends up trying to mirror you two and pulling away. And what you get is this very vicious cycle and a power struggle. This is how relationships can end up breaking very quickly. It's a power struggle, right? So as I said, obviously, and the reason why I say that about him is because on several occasions, not even several occasions, one of his songs that he put out, I think at the time, it had some lyrics that I think, I want to put this here. So this was some lyrics. It says, fall in love. If you can see, it says, fall in love. I hate that S. Knocking me off my grind. I can't F with relationships. Okay. Now, I think this is really important. And the reason why I think it's important is because it goes back to my point, proving what I'm saying, that when dismissive avoidance get into relationships, when they first start, they're amazing. They're very heart orientated. Then, when the relationship gets to a commitment stage and it reaches a plateau, they get scared. Why do they get scared? Because now you may rely on me, you may ask too much of me, you might criticize me. They're really just afraid of being rejected, right? Everything's too good, too smooth. I'm scared I'm going to get rejected. So what you'll realize is that the dismissive avoidant will throw themselves into work. Especially as a man, throw himself into work because what he wants is not to be pulled and manipulated by his own emotions. The dismissive avoidant does not trust his own emotions, and because he does not trust their own emotions, because the emotions didn't serve them as a child, they were neglected. The emotions don't help survival. The emotions don't help me grow. My emotions don't help me, do not benefit me. I don't get rewarded for being emotional. Right? Look at what he's doing now. Look at when he says one or two things on the internet. Look what happens. Does he get rewarded? Now, some of it's very immature. Can't lie to you. Right? But the moment he speaks, everybody's on him. He does not get rewarded for emotion. So guess what? What's the point of doing it? So if you start making him feel emotions that he doesn't really like to address at the time, he might feel it's a manipulative. He might feel like he's weak. He may feel that these emotions are problematic, and he will actually have another emotion, funny enough, to counteract the emotion, which is what? Disgust. And when you feel disgust as an emotion, what do you tend to do? You repel. So what you'll realize is that the dismissive avoidant will pull away. And in that space, he might use work as the focal point to throw all his energy into. Right? Now, because he gets rewarded through the work that he's putting in, the grind he's putting in, because number one, the world rewards men for being financial providers. Number two, it is a materialism. What I mean by that is it's material manifestation. I can see results and touch it. The dismissive avoidant does not understand, let me not say that again, does not really, it's not really congruent with tangible results that are emotional, because in reality, that is not what they were rewarded for. They're afraid their needs won't get met. So in that space, when they're afraid of their needs not getting met, they don't believe that actually being emotional is beneficial. So even if the reward is emotional, reality is I'm going to use a physical means to get it. And that's why I played a video of them doing Christmas. See, Christmas is great because all my hard work gets to be appreciated, acknowledged, and I get to be affirmed. How? When I buy Halle gifts, she gonna love me. You can see the hard work that I've been putting in. It's there in the presence, right? And I can be acknowledged as being a quote-unquote great man, right? Now, I don't think he's a bad guy either, personally. And so for the dismissive avoidant, that has tangible results. So I'm going to do more of that. But the emotional aspect doesn't have tangible results. It never aided me in the beginning. It never helped me as a child. Why would I need it as an adult? That's what they do. And because I feel like it pulls me out of my frame, and I can't, you see, relationships, you know, got to get on my grind because there's a reward behind that behavior. Okay? All right. So I think that's what happened a lot of times with DDG and Halle as well. And then he says in one of his songs, he fell in love. He said obviously that, you know, if you look at the way that he operates, it's music, it's tweets, it's silly videos, it's comments that he makes that tend to be quite immature or ill-timed, and that actually speaks to emotional regulation. There is an issue with him, I believe, that he doesn't potentially he may not deal with anger very well. And most avoidants do not deal with anger very well. They don't have a very good relationship with anger, fear, or sadness, and that's a component of emotional safety. Now, I'll put a little chart on here so you can actually see it. Emotional safety. Okay, so when you look at this chart here, difficult emotions honor and express sadness, anger, or fear. The inability to fully be able to express your anger, fear, or sadness tends to lead to an expression of behavior. So when you're seeing DDG come out with a tweet that was at a bad time during Little Mermaid, a song during Little Mermaid, you know, certain comments that he makes that are just so immature, it seems, really and truly what's happening is the inability to really communicate your vulnerabilities. And because you're not expressing that and saying it in a relationship, potentially, what you're going to find is that the behavior is going to come out outwardly. And that's where I'm saying about having a good relationship and being emotionally safe. Being able to say, you know what, I can tell you what's on my heart because I trust that whatever I say to you will be respected, will be valued, and then validated. But a lot of dismissives don't feel safe. And they don't feel safe within themselves first, so they won't feel safe with you. Okay? All right? And so that can be very, very difficult. Now, I've talked almost 20 minutes talking about this. I want to talk a little bit about the fearful avoidant aspect because Halle has also got a part to play here. Understanding that the other component is fearful avoidance. Fearful avoidants are both anxious and avoidant. And what I saw with Halle is that knowing her background, that her father had the DV situation, there's no way it was one moment. More than likely not. More than likely it wasn't going to be one moment. What I mean by that is that DV doesn't just necessarily just come after one thing. DV, we don't get straight from there to DV. What we usually have is an emotional abuse aspect that gets to DV, which means the household might have been tense. The household might have been a place of certain jokes or certain comments being made. There would have been certain behaviors that could have been elicited. Now, he may not have done that against the kids, but let's say he was doing that against the mother. The mother then would have to respond in a way by keeping herself secure when she deals with the kids. Now, how easy is that? It's not. When you potentially are being mistreated, how do you handle that? you can either go into a very anxious state where you're just trying to do everything and become a servant and become a people pleaser, or you, and I mean, people pleasers can be both avoidance and anxious people, by the way. Or you can go into a very avoidant state where you become very numb to what's going on around you, right? So let's say if your husband is abusive, you can go very, very numb, or you can be very, very hyper vigilant and active and just trying to people please the partner so that they don't move mad. Now that's really important because the kids are going to feel it. Now, at the time he went for the DV program was in 2000, I believe, was it 2007 or something like that? So the kids would have been of a certain age. 2007, yeah. So the kids would have been of a certain age. Halle would have been of a certain age, like 6 or 7. So was Chloe. So even if they don't remember it fully, their body probably would have taken stock of the environment that they were actually in. And then that will begin to inform them in adulthood. So they might even realize fully what's happening to them. Okay? All right? Now, with fearful avoidance, their biggest issue is that they feel like they're bad people. They feel they're unlovable. They think that they're the only one who think this way. They, they believe they have to earn people's love. They get validated by being everybody's servant and helping everybody else because they're afraid of being abandoned or rejected or betrayed. They feel like, and this is a major one, that if you be nice to them, and this is what might have happened with her and DDG, that if you be nice to them, the fact that they might have not received that niceness in the home, the fact that you're nice, I don't want to lose that, right? And they have an inability to put up proper boundaries in certain relationships. So what can end up happening is, right, in a relationship specifically, they can get lost. They can become codependent. Okay? Can almost become codependent. And so they may not want to lose that relationship. So they will become a chameleon. And they will be whatever you want them to be for the time being until they run out of steam. In fact, they're actually acting a lot of times and performing because they're afraid of what you might do, in the sense of you might leave them, you might betray them, you might reject them. In the sense of when they are playing this role of being a perfect person, they're doing it because they're afraid that people will leave them or abandon them or not like them for who they actually are. Because again, when they show up, their fear is, if you see me for who I really am underneath the mask, will you like what you see? Will you like what you see? So, that can be very difficult too. So imagine when we go to Little Mermaid and a situation happens and, he does what he does. And, he puts a tweet out at the same time saying about, I didn't know racism existed, or, Little Mermaid situation that everyone mentions about, right? She might not view it that way because, again, she might view it as, okay, cool, I'm a ride or die. Again, fearful avoidance can be very codependent, so they can become ride or die. If I'm there, if I'm around, he don't behave like that. You know what I'm saying to you? I understand him differently from everybody else. I've seen another side of DDG that no one else has seen. That codependent spirit can happen. And so because of that, they can end up staying in relationships longer than they actually need to. When they need to actually exit, they will stay in a relationship much longer than they actually need to, because they're afraid that if they leave, they become the bad guy. Maybe they're making a mistake because who else would treat them better than what they're getting treated? Imagine your father was done for DV. This is what I'm saying. Like, he didn't go to prison, but he had to do a DV program. If DDG is not abusing you, if he's not necessarily slinging mud at you, if he's not insulting you, this is amazing. This is way better than what I might have experienced. So why leave? Do you get what I'm saying to you? Why leave? So it seems better because of what you may have come from. So it can be very difficult for fearful avoidance to leave a relationship. Okay? So the way that she covered him with the devil did this when the Ruby Rose situation was very evident of a ride or die. And again, what you'll realize is that if he is a dismissive avoidant, then she potentially would be in her anxious bag. She would potentially be in her anxious side of things because as he's pulling away, she wants to also chase. And the problem with chasing is this. Once you chase somebody, when you chase them, what tends to happen is you forget all your fears because all you're thinking about is chasing. And it's only until you settle down and you've caught what you want does your actual behavior start to show up. See, anybody who's chasing, you know this, and I've said this before, this is why I don't like chasing. Don't chase, because when you finally settle down, how you really feel is going to come out. Because a lot of times when you're running, all you're focused on is running. But you forget, due to the adrenaline and the cortisol running around your body, about the pain that you might be feeling. And as soon as you stop running, you feel pain. Why is that? Because now you can actually acknowledge you. You weren't acknowledging you before because you were chasing something and that was your motivation and your goal. And so the same thing happens in relationships between people in attachment styles, is that sometimes when you're chasing somebody, and I believe that she was a fan of DDG as well. So you could be chasing somebody and you won't feel it until you settle down. You're like, actually, now I've got to think about me. And fearful avoidants have a very big tendency to prioritize other people ahead of themselves. Big time. Right? They will tend to put other people's needs ahead of themselves. In fact, they don't even oftentimes know what their needs are. Same as dismissive avoidance. They don't always know what their needs are. And so what you'll realize is they move with feeling. And what can also happen is that because the FA can start in their head because they're performing, when they come into a plateau of the relationship and we've come to an equilibrium, they move into a heart space. Now, the heart space is confusing because that's a whole bag of emotions that I'm not even sure what emotions I'm actually feeling. Because remember, the fearful avoidant grew up in an often chaotic background. You don't have time to even label your emotions are. Your emotions are now not even safe. You didn't have an answer to the erratic, sporadic, random behaviors. You didn't have an answer for that. So you don't really get time to really sit yourself to find out what you're actually feeling. It takes a longer time for you to process what's in your mind and what's in your heart. So when you move into a heart space in a relationship, the DA often moves to the head space. And that's why the DA will start flaw finding in you to create distance. And the FA moves into a heart space, and then they try to either chase or they become avoidant because now there's too many emotions they're feeling. Man, look, with Halle and DDG, let's just get back together again. You know why? Because they both put out music straight away when they finished the relationship. Now, people are saying that she didn't speak. Yeah, she didn't speak. But as soon as they broke up, they both put out music on their page that they both were singing. And I was like, they were both sending each other a message. Her song was about, don't embarrass me, mother effer, da 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 da. His song was about, you cheated, you're in your bag, B. They were both trying to show that they were both good. Neither of them were processing how they really felt. Don't get excited because you see, don't get excited and think DJ's the only one that's bad because he's one talking. If it doesn't matter whether you're talking or not talking, are you processing what you're feeling? And so for fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance, the key solution, and I'm always going to say this, is radical honesty. The ability to be vulnerable with yourself and be vulnerable with others. Okay? The ability to be emotionally safe with yourself. And look, honor your expression of sadness, anger, or fear with yourself first. And then you can begin to be confident in sharing other people. Once I'm confident in how I feel, once I stop being a overly critical person of my emotions and my feelings, once I can get into that bag, what I can really start to do is I can start to feel safe, even with you. Even if you're moving mad, I'll still feel safe. Because a fish in the water, a fish in the ocean, a fish in the sea, a fish in a river, a fish in a pond, a fish in a lake, a fish in a fish tank, okay, or a bloody sink, it's still a fish, and a fish will still swim because it's confident in who he is. And so the same way that you will be confident in being able to express how you feel, irrespective of what comes your way. It don't matter if they make it unsafe. You know why? Because in reality, I'm so confident in myself and how safe I am. It's like when I film TikToks, yeah, and it's my last point. I finish on when I film TikToks, I'm in the gym, I film them in front of people. I don't care. I can film it. I can film it. You can laugh, and I'm even going to do it more. Because I'm confident about that part of me. But ask me to approach a girl and man them are laughing, I might think twice. Why? I'm not as confident in that area. So whenever you're confident in something, it doesn't matter what environment you're in, you will always exceed. When you're not confident in it, the environment does matter. Okay, so hopefully you guys have learned something from this. I hope I've been able to kind of share something for you guys. If you've got any questions, then comment down below. I'd love to hear your perspective. But I wanted to go deeper with this with DDG and Halle Bailey as well to give us a better understanding. Much respect. I appreciate you guys. We'll see you again soon.